Welcome to the e-commerce growth show, brought to you by Segmentify.
Welcome everyone to another vlog in the e-commerce growth show. So now we're into series 4, which is amazing. Super excited to talk to you about this series where we're actually interviewing a set of digital and e-commerce agencies across the world that are just talking about some really awesome subjects over the coming weeks. As you know from series 3, we were talking about best practice adoption, implementation of Segmentify with some of our customers. But as I say, we've moved on now to series 4, where I've got a great guy I'm going to introduce to you called Stephen Carl. And so Stephen, he was a very interesting guy. He was an early employee of an Amazon startup that specialized in 1-hour delivery. So this is going to be interesting. And the company was called Cosmo.com. And that was actually back in 1998. So we are talking way ahead of the curve, obviously, in terms of what later became Amazon Prime. And he was saying to me earlier, actually, that this whole idea of how Amazon began to differentiate in the space of e-commerce by delivery. Obviously, we'll hear a lot more later on. But anyway, so Amazon invested a lot of money in that. And, Stephen learned loads in the business. He's been actually in the e-commerce community for 20 years plus now. He's really passionate about watching the trends and getting ahead of the curve. So really interesting guy to have on the show. And actually at the moment, he runs a digital agency called Needle Movement. So super glad to introduce you, Stephen. How are you doing?
It's great to be on the show. I'm doing great. How are you doing, Phill?
Yeah, I'm really good. Thanks. Thanks for being on the show. It's great to hear a bit more about what you've been up to. Why don't we start with a bit of an icebreaker as we normally do? And we were just talking earlier about Needle Movement. I mean, tell the guys why that particular name.
Okay. So with Needle Movement,
yeah,
I had been on the client side for a long time, and about 5 years ago, I just decided to start an agency. And that became Needle Movement. Why Needle Movement? I'm sure your audience knows the answer to that, because always in business, I had a holistic point of view, because I didn't care how you got sales or how you found success. It didn't matter if it was search. It didn't matter if it was the website, email. I just wanted to see what really moved the needle. And then when I watched the news, all over the place, I would hear this phrase, move the needle. So that's how Needle Movement came about. And I think what's interesting about that term is about 5 years ago, I always thought about it as just more money, how the company can make more money, and that revenue would instantly lead to success. And now I think moving the needle happens in so many areas of your life. It's just making progress in your goals. So that's how the name came about.
Very cool. Very apt. I like it. And the other thing we
I've thought about that phrase, move the needle, a lot. So that's how.
Yeah, but Needle Movement is cool. It kind of
thank you.
It goes well. We also had a quick chat about conscious e-commerce, and I thought I'd just ask you about that before we kind of get into the meat and bones of the chat. Interesting phrase, interesting couple of words. That, I mean, what does that mean for you, do you think, particularly as you mentioned being a vegetarian stroke sort of vegan?
Right. Yeah, so I think we all go on our journey and we have our different preferences, and I actually happen to be married as well to a vegetarian/vegan. Mm-hmm. So I know what's good for me. That was one motivation to becoming a vegetarian.
Yeah.
But just having broad experience in e-commerce, and then noticing how buying habits have been changing over the past few years. Because I remember a long time ago, it used to just be about what's the price?
Yeah.
How cool is this product? What problem is it solving? And now I'm just seeing people are buying for different reasons in addition. I mean, people are going to buy something with the lowest price. That is going to be a factor. But with brands, I think we can't really, if price is the only differentiator you have, then it becomes harder to succeed. So that's how conscious e-commerce has become an intriguing trend, as I'm learning about different food options, different, also environmental sustainability is becoming a huge issue in e-commerce as well. So it's great to see how I think with brands, a lot of people on the brand side, people don't just want to talk about product or just want to talk about price. So, talking about an issue that they're passionate about or a charity they support is it's the content team loves it, the creative team, because they have something else to talk about. It broadens the palette of things that you can use, and that's where I see brands like Allbirds and Everlane, among many other ethical brands, finding some legs here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because people would be getting bored now of me talking about Gumbies, because in the UK, I buy my flip flops like recycled rubber, and just I don't know. I got once in TK Maxx, and that was it. I became a kind of a loyal customer. But then I dealt with them directly on the website, and I realised I read about their eco-friendly kind of approach, their differentiation through sustainability. Yes, it was a great price. It was still as the same price as Amazon, so there was no need for me to sort of jump ship and try and hunt on the price. Plus, they free delivery, and right in the middle of COVID, I got flip flops in within 24 hours, and it just ticking all those boxes of not just price that you talk about, which just nailed it for me in terms of my customer lifetime value of that brand.
All right, yeah, you just mentioned another brand I have to check out, but I love that approach that you're talking about, because it's not like, I think what's a turnoff to conscious consumerism is this holier than thou aspect to it, where it's like, we're the most sustainable company on the planet, and that's all we do, and everybody else sucks, and that's not what it is. I think, like with Gumbies and even I think Allbirds does this really well too. They don't just say, they're like, we care about the environment, but we're also into making really comfortable shoes, and they tell this story about New Zealand wool that's gorgeous. So it's all these little factors, and then someone says, you know what, like this brand gives a shit about people, this brand cares, like I'm more apt, like I can buy my flip-flops in 100 different places. Now you've given me a reason to support you.
Exactly. I think that you've got my psychology on it as well. That's exactly kind of how I felt. So clearly it works, but like you say, it's not just one or the other. I think it's a combination. You sit down and you realize that there is more ways than price. In fact, there has to be more ways than price to be able to grab that loyalty of a customer. And yes, you have to have a fantastic product, 100%. You can't just blag it on ecology and price, because then you'll have a really rubbish flip-flop that dies within a month and you never do it again. So yeah, no, completely. But no, interesting phrase. I've not heard that before. But so why don't we kind of crack on with the main topic, if you like? And it's this thing called conversation marketing that we were talking about earlier. So this is an interesting thing. I've not heard that. I mean, I'm not in your space, obviously, but is that a phrase then which is common? I mean, is it already known that, or have you coined that, or?
No, it's been coming up a lot over the past year. Some people say conversation commerce, chat commerce, or conversation marketing.
Very interesting. So the question is then, obviously you are passionate about watching trends. You've been in e-commerce for a long time. So do you feel that this is a lasting trend? And obviously we're going to hear all about it. And how should e-commerce, therefore, our brands, our watchers, how should they prepare for this type of thing that you're talking about?
Yeah. So with conversation commerce, I think it is a lasting trend, and we're in a good point right now because we're in that early adopter wave where there are plenty of companies that are doing it, but most companies are not. And to explain conversation commerce, I mean, I focus on the channels of email, SMS, live chat, and Facebook Messenger. And it goes in that, it fits into, there's another phrase that's making the rounds. And yeah, like I've been being in this business for a long time, you hear buzzwords all the time and you just gotta, gauge them. But owned media is a very popular one right now. And owned media is that if brands own the subscriber list, then they can market at their own cadence, and they don't need a middle person like a Google or Facebook to have access to an audience. So because they're not paying for that audience, they're not paying a bounty for every click in advertising, owned media can be more profitable for a company. So just so now just having your subscriber list.
Mm-hmm.
I think in America, TikTok became a hot button issue because we had these poor influencers who were rocking TikTok
Mm-hmm.
and had, with millions of followers, and then all of a sudden the government is threatening to shut down TikTok. So these influencers had millions of followers, like, what am I going to do? And I think that's resolved
Yeah.
now. But it's the idea of, like, if you don't own the channel, what happens if they take it away from you? And that's where email and SMS, like building up those lists, is really important. So I think what conversation commerce and conversation marketing is like, everybody says that marketing is about storytelling, and that is very true. An evolution is that we've now turned brands into human beings. They have, companies like Casper, they have
Yeah.
human names. And we, just like with conscious commerce, we expect now we have all these millennials, especially, and Gen Z, they expect their companies, they expect their companies to be good citizens. They treat them like human beings, and they have expectations like human beings. So the extension of that is, if you like a human being, don't you want to chat with them? Don't you want to have a conversation? And that having these little bits of conversation deepens the
Mm-hmm.
relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So, they say in marketing you have to have 15 interactions with the brand to trust them enough to purchase. And, let's just say I have a live chat on a website with a customer service representative. I have a really good experience with them. That makes me feel better about the brand. Um, but that is what conversation marketing is. It's the ability to have a two-way dialogue, so that, it's like, it's kind of like the, back in the day when there was, or like a flea market, an open market where you have a buyer and a seller, and they have a cute conversation, and the buyer has certain things that they need to have answered, and the seller is trying to bring out certain information. So by having a chat, you get all that done in one fell swoop quickly.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So in terms of the content, if you like, of
Mm-hmm.
that type of messaging, I mean, I'm interested. You've said that this is reasonably early adoption phase. So that's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. So obviously I'll be familiar with email and the fact that is two-way, in the sense that, okay, it's not real time, but I'll get an email, I can respond to it, as opposed to it being, one way, if you like. But when you start talking about messenger,
Mm-hmm.
SMS, etc., what does it look like in terms of the messaging, and what are you trying to? I know you talked about the relationship deepening, but what exactly are you trying, or what is one trying to do as a brand within that medium?
So I think email is a great place to start, because we all do it. We're all very
Yeah,
familiar with it. And, the one thing I notice on email these days is how subject lines have changed so
yeah,
much, that subject lines are just so conversational, and that's the extension of it.
right.
But, with email, it's really, I guess what's nice about for content, your brand is going to have certain frequently asked questions and
Yeah.
answers, and you can riff on that. Like, with a lot of content from email can be repurposed into, say, an SMS, or or a Facebook Messenger. Or with live chat, it's really just, you have, whenever someone asks a certain question, you're going to have a canned response to it. So it's not, I think with there is additional
Hmm.
content, but I think email is a really good starter kit for conversation commerce, because we know how to build an email. We know what, we've done abandoned cart series and like
Yeah.
automations. So now we're just kind of, maybe we're just taking the email message and cutting it in half and putting it into SMS. I think
Hmm.
with all mediums, it's like you just have to tweak it to the platform. But the good news is that you don't have to start from scratch in many cases with these newer channels.
Yeah. So are you almost like, are you saying that, okay, so everybody will be used to getting emails from brands, a newsletter, um, a discount, a deal, a review, etc. are you basically saying that this is moving now to repurposing that information, maybe, I don't know, cutting it down in some way so that it's palatable for, say, a text message or messenger, and you start getting that information rather than, or in addition to email, via text and messenger, for argument's sake?
That's a good question. I think it would. I don't think you're going to stop getting emails.
No.
I think it will. There will be additional. It will be additional message. Like you'll get additional messages on those channels. I think with SMS, I mean, every one of them is unique. But with SMS, it's a very personal channel, and you want people to get nasty. Send them an SMS every day. They will not be subscribed to your list. So there's a sensitivity on that. But I think it's really more, it's kind of nice actually, because I think people get away with murder on email where they just they're like, let's send to everybody. And I'm sure everyone wants to get a message twice a day, right?
Yeah, we're sending out 2 today.
Right. So, but I think with SMS, you have to be very, you just send important messages. It's not going to be something where you send all the time.
No, but it is an important part of the strategy. You're basically saying that it's another, if you use it carefully, it shouldn't be something that we ignore. We should be embracing.
I mean, with SMS in particular, the advantage is that you get around the inbox, because I know, like, you and I, like, I got 200 emails today, and I didn't open every promotional message, so I didn't open up the Gmail tab. So I think all these email scientists are like, why don't people open? Why don't people click? It's because we're also getting so much more news, and even with the holidays, SMS is how people are going to slide in, because if everybody is sending an email on Black Friday or Cyber Monday, odds are your message isn't going to get through, and or as effectively. So with SMS, they get 80% and up open rates, 30% click-through rates, and that's because there's no inbox. So if I really like a brand and I want the message, then I want to hear about their sale or the new product. So that is a way that brands can get around it.
Interesting. I mean, like you say, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, obviously, like you say, it's kind of an early adoption phase. How have you? Obviously, you do this, right, as part of Needle Movement from a strategy point of view. How have you seen? Have you seen any results from this type of thing yet? What sort of results?
Yeah. So, and we're on the Needle Movement side, like, we're executing campaigns for clients. So the thing about these channels that I personally like is I actually started off as a digital strategy person, where I would work with brands and I would say, this is what you should be doing. This is the best use of your money. And what ended up happening, a funny thing ended up happening, which is everything kept going back to email.
Yeah.
Because email is the most profitable channel. And you always, like, with email, brands typically can find their most passionate audience. So with these channels, I mean, we're seeing great ROI. I mean, I think email has the highest ROI. I mean, you get, I don't want to throw out ridiculous numbers, but because people say 100x. I don't know if it's that high, but it's high. You're definitely making more money on email than you are on on a lot of the paid media options that you have. So that's where it starts. I think with SMS, we've seen, like, if you could be killing it at 25x revenue. But I think with these channels, it's like when you're making, I don't want to, we always get into, like, in e-commerce, there's this war between all the different channels and what works best. And again, I like to see it holistically. But I've seen great results that come from conversational marketing channels, and it's just it can actually be an extension of your paid media strategy as well, because, like, when you advertise on a Google, a Facebook, a TikTok, or whatever, you want to get people to your website, and most of them aren't going to buy. So it's not. So it's like sometimes I feel like with ads, there's this buy or die mentality with, unless they bought, this isn't successful. And I think getting signups is awesome. Like if you can prove in your campaign, well, we sign people up to our email list, we sign people to our SMS list, because then you own the relationship. You can market however much you want
Yeah.
at your cadence. You don't have to depend. So, but just to answer your question about profitability, like I look at a number of dashboards and I'm very happy with the results that I'm seeing right now in like email, SMS, and Messenger.
Sure. So, I mean, I'm interested in some of the applications because obviously, we're not an e-commerce brand, Segmentify, but in terms of you mentioned the sensitivity and the nuances around SMS messaging, for example. Obviously, we'll all be familiar with how fantastically powerful delivery tracking and guidance on the delivery journey is via text, and how that helps to obviously build customer loyalty, great customer satisfaction, and lifetime value indirectly, like you say, as opposed to a direct sale, if you like. In terms of application within the Segmentify domain, we have some interesting stories to tell around that. One which is quite compelling is that we did a deployment with a very large retail operation, both bricks and mortar and online. And they wanted to utilize the payment token, the open payment token window. You have to excuse me, I don't know the full technical ins and outs. But effectively, I think you probably know better than I do that if you're using a payment gateway at the till, there's a token that opens up or something for a half an hour window after payment. And so we did this implementation whereby you could basically send a SMS message within that half an hour window based on the recommendations, the personalization of that customer. And whilst they were still browsing in the shop or went out, get a coffee, go and have a pizza before they go home, you've sent them a message that perhaps has analyzed what their abandoned basket was, in inverted commas, in the shop, or some other complementary upsell and so on products that go with the item that they bought. And you say, hey, by the way, there's a 10% discount on this kind of right now. Why don't you pop back and grab it, or something like that. Now that actually raised.
Yeah, how did it do? I'm sure it sounds good.
It was awesome. It was awesome, and it raised an extra 1% of revenue, of annual revenue, of GMV. Yeah, and this was £100 million organization, right? So that was not to be sniffed at, and so that was a really, really cool kind of deployment, if you like, of the kind of thing you're talking about. I think in terms of the clever way to use this kind of chat marketing.
It fills all the. I don't think it's a lot of the types of campaigns that people are already running.
Yeah.
And then like in that instance, SMS made it easier that SMS is an immediate channel, so you could send that message. But it's not. I mean, I think you can start you can do some of the same things that you do with email.
Yeah.
But you make it a multi-channel thing, because like what people are doing now is like it's an abandoned cart campaign, essentially. You're talking about. And now what brands are doing is they just mix it up and they just say, okay, I'm going to send an SMS a couple hours later, then I'm going to send an email, because everybody has their own favorite channel that they, some people look at email more, God bless my mother, she likes being on the phone. Like that's how she communicates. And then like my nephew, he's texting all the time. So you want to just find people where they in their natural habitat, and they'll respond.
Yeah, I totally agree. Actually, so one of the things. So you're right. I mean, I know there's many people that will run their life on notifications, right? Push notification. So Segmentify is split into four key pillars, right? On-site recommendations, on-site search, push notification, and email. And obviously, again, I'm just thinking about it in terms of what you're saying around this conversation commerce and using different channels. So the ability to push out a push notification for a price drop on the product that was abandoned.
Yes.
Something really quick and snappy, and it's literally like 2 lines, but it's coming in on a desktop or it's coming in on a mobile, and you've set notifications to that particular app, be it Chrome or whatever. All of a sudden, you've got access to those people that like to operate that way. And I mean, I know people that will sit with their smartphone, and every 3 seconds it's going bing, 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 bing. And you're like, whoa, what are you doing? You know, I mean, that would do my head in, to be honest. So I don't bother turning the notifications on, and I might get a text, or I'll try and control the environment more, because I'll go into my inbox when I want to, you know, and not be like, you know, my life is run by looking at my phone every time it makes a noise. But I know that millions of people like embrace that and love it. Even my wife is like that. You know, it'll ping and off she goes and does her thing. So I totally agree in terms of hitting up the customer where they feel most comfortable. It's very interesting.
And there's always like, yeah, with messages, there's always this in marketing, when you broadcast something on 2 different channels, you typically perform better than one.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's not that combination of the 2 or 3, you know, fits into it. But I think even, you know, on the business to business side, you know, I think with live chat, there's been a lot of progress with live chat and chatbots and the way customer service has been done. Because one thing that happened with conversation marketing is, you know, just like the both of us, we're always looking for the next thing or new trends that we can leverage. Yeah. And I remember hearing in January of this year how customers didn't mind chatbots, because, you know, everyone's fear with automated conversations is, oh, I'm talking to a robot. This is going to be super boring and lame. But consumers were saying, hey, if a chatbot can help me and respond in 5 minutes versus me waiting 12 hours for a customer service representative to get back to me, or being on long hold times, I'm all for the chatbots. And that's what came out at the beginning of this year. And it just shows like that, you know, by being able to send messages quickly and responsively instead of the perfect non-automated message, it does, you know, it keeps you top of mind to your consumers.
Yeah, I mean, especially like you say, that technology is getting cleverer and cleverer, isn't it, in terms of the AI engines behind it?
Yes.
So I think, you know, over the years I've used it and thought, what a load of rubbish, and then a few years later I'm on, you know, I'm doing it with Talk or something. I'm like, wow, that's actually not bad.
Yeah, like AI is not the robots, and I think it's an important distinction that AI is kind of like you being what's the analogy? It's like you being Iron Man and having a number of tools at your disposal so that you can do more.
Yeah.
You know, and that it's just it increases your productivity in a certain way.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, it's not, you know, it's how to, you know, but that's, you know, and that's where the opportunity is, that it will, you know, it helps us, like some of the basic stuff that we don't want to do. It's easier to sort through it.
Yeah, no, completely. I mean, a lot of people say that we're in the game of AI, but really we're in the game of machine learning. You know, it's a different thing. We're taking information and we're serving up stuff which is super relevant, super quick. That's not AI. You know, we're learning stuff really, really quickly. Yeah, I mean, just moving on to, obviously we talked about kind of acquisition in a way, list growth, owning the channel, owned media, understand that completely. Have you got any tactics for different ways in which to maximize your list growth?
So so with list growth, I think the main tactic that companies have to do with list growth is to not be asleep at the wheel. I mean, that, you know, and that's the thing with, you know, with e-commerce, we focus all of our time on the tools, but I think the staff and the focus of an organization, you know, you know, the key thing, a key thing to grow lists, I mean, we'll get into tactics, but I think this is the number one thing that can set you up for success, is assigning a team for list growth. And looking at your list growth, the number of new subscribers you have, new accounts, new SMS, whatever, and having that be a key performance indicator that people will have to report on and optimize on. Because then you have, you know, it's not about, I think e-commerce is not as much about rocket ships. It's about constant optimization, because that's how you get, if you get 10% better every month, then at the end of 12 months, you'll be 300% up. And that's what you can do with list growth. I mean, in terms of tactics, a lot of it is, I feel like now e-commerce is like a diaspora where you have the people visiting your website, and then there's people that visit your Instagram page, and then there's your email subscribers, and you want to pull from all of those places. So your Instagram followers, they could sign up to your email list. So how do you get them to do that? So a lot of it is, making all the people you already have who have already signed up and said, yes, I'm interested in your brand, I want to hear more, how you get them there. But there's some cool tactics. Like, there's the obvious one with pop-ups, where pop-ups are still very, pop-ups on websites. The people that come to your website are probably your best, highest quality traffic. So getting them to sign up through an incentive, through nice creative is a good way, and people do it. But the cross-pollination is cool too. Like, I heard of a cool tactic in email where on certain email platforms, if you're like, if you want to get an SMS list quickly, you could put a message on every one of your emails with a content block that says, sign up for text. Here's how you do it. And then those people would be able to do that. But people are doing creative stuff even with text messaging where there's keywords and codes where it's, people even use, people even work with influencers where they'll say, text sign up to the number 333222. And then when they do that, they get sent to a targeted page. So those are some tactics that people can use. But I think a lot of it is just that focus of just because you have to tinker with stuff. There's no magic.
No.
Rarely your day one is your worst day.
Absolutely. So I agree. Putting dedicated resource, having a team you've mentioned. So obviously there's a lot going on in an e-commerce business. So many things to have to do, keep control of, etc. And obviously coming from one little slice of Segmentify, to pardon expression, everybody's trying to get in the door, right? Everyone's got a fantastic reason why they should be working with the brand. And I'm not decrying that at all. There's some fantastic technology in so many different areas out there. But of course, the team probably has only got so much resource and so on. And what you've said, as I've said, as we've discussed in other episodes, there's so much in each of these areas of expertise that needs to be done, whether it's doing the content, getting it out on the channels, getting the results, accruing the list and growing it, like you say, working out the next thing to do and so on. So does needle movement kind of provide a service around this to sort of take some of that weight off the team? Do they assist the team? What exactly would you say was your kind of, what do you bring to the table, if you like, in all this?
Yes. It all comes back to the team. And I know the situation that brands are in because I was on the client side for 15 years. And we both know how hard it is to be in the in-house team where, especially this, just the amount of initiatives the amount of channels that people have to put together. I think with brands, the number one thing is you can reverse engineer your results, and you can say, because I guess with conversation marketing and things like email, for example, you can sit back and say, well, what if we wanted to double our revenue in email? Like, what's holding us back? Why can't we do this? And then, probably one of the team members who's wearing 15 hats will have a very emotional response, but they're going to say what they need. Like, do they need more creative? Do they need someone to manage the automations? Do they need strategy? Like, is there no one technical that can help them? So the art director is doing the coding. Is the chief of marketing sending emails out when they should be doing 10 other things? Like, there's a lot of bottlenecks that happen. And I think with email, the biggest thing that's happening is it is not a do-it-yourself channel anymore because there's just tons of money left on the table. So that's, so have a lot of empathy for e-commerce teams where they're wearing all the hats. I guess where needle movement comes in, it can be a full service relationship where you do everything. It can also be a supportive relationship where we're filling in a role.
Yeah.
And we've covered both areas actually, because I think companies have different frameworks. So sometimes they have the creative part down. They make beautiful creatives, but they don't know who they're missing a lot of opportunities on which audiences to send it
Mm-hmm.
to. But like, some of this stuff, like the email team, it's not a 1 or 2 person job, or it's not something one person can be doing in addition to 4 other things. It's, there's specific needs.
Yeah.
So I think that's so with our clients, that's what we get into in the beginning, which is, what's holding you back right now, and how can, and where will having additional resources do that be put into it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I know we come across this time and time again, but it does seem to be a trend, for want of a better word, that this whole idea of extending the team out, and that various areas of expertise outside the e-commerce team are now available for the team to be spread in a number of directions in a cost-effective way.
Yes.
Obviously talking about what you're doing is one area. Obviously, in terms of personalization, that's where we come in with the same thing, in the sense that, like you just said, you shouldn't really have this area of your expertise sort of just piecemeal. Can't afford to do that anymore. It has to be dedicated, which needs resources put on it. And therefore, using an expert outside of your team as an extension of that team seems like a logical thing to do. So if you want the best out of your content and your conversation marketing that you're talking about, or you want the very best and the marginal gains out of your personalization, or anything else for that matter technologically that you need as a brand, it stands to reason that you need to work with suppliers that have the expertise and have the resources to optimize that area for you and with you. That sounds like that's where you're differentiating in one of the ways. And certainly how Segmentify differentiates, by being able to offer that kind of service, where the expertise is being deployed for them, and best practice is actually being recommended to them, as opposed to it being reactive. It's proactive.
Well, with all these and I think with all the new technology that's out there and channels, in many cases, it's just hard to have the time to do the research. Like, we have certain channels like search engine optimization and search engine marketing, where brands recognize that they're not going to do it all themselves. They're going to hire out an agency for that expertise. And I think, fortunately for everybody involved, it is much easier to outsource than it ever has been.
Yeah.
People can do it at comfortable price points and prioritize.
Definitely.
Because I just think with companies now, like, why struggle if you don't have to? I think especially if you can, everyone looks better once you're getting the results that you have. I think a lot of times it's just fitting it into budgets, and now it's possible to find resources at different price points. Absolutely. And just get problems solved.
Definitely. So just finishing off this topic, if you like, before we round everything off. What about, I'm interested in your thoughts on the future of this particular space, conversation commerce, or conversation marketing. What does the future hold for it, in your opinion, as a bit of a trend spotter? What other platforms, what other things are going on in that space?
The future is bright in this area. Now we have, there are already, like for SMS, I mean, to quantify it, there are already thousands of brands that are, this was a big transition year for SMS, that more brands got onto it. The flow of conversation marketing is similar despite it being on different channels. So that is the good news for brands, that you don't, for the audience, you don't have to, it's going to be a similar flow that's going to happen. Where the future goes on it. Like, one reason why Facebook Messenger is an important platform is because it's really the first platform that fully embraced all the interactivity and is really a bona fide messaging app. And where we get this from actually is from Asia. It's coming from China, where people do everything on their phones. And we're just bringing it in. But Facebook Messenger is the first one. And I think the difference is that email and SMS are still not totally interactive, based on just the age of those platforms, where we're making it more, and innovations like 5G, I think, are going to speed that up. But Messenger is really made for that interactivity. And, things like being able to complete a transaction within a chat itself, like not even having to go to the website. Things like that are in the future because it's in the best interest of all the platforms too. Every platform wants to close transactions because then they can get a cut. So right now, we have Messenger. It's going to go to other Facebook properties like Instagram and WhatsApp. Looking at things like display advertising, if you're Google and you have a display ad, wouldn't you want to have a conversation with someone that's clicking on it? So there is an incorporation of conversation marketing features into different platforms. Like, that's already Google and Apple are doing betas on how much more performance they could get on, like Google's situation, and add that, ask a question or where someone can interact directly through it. And that would be an automated chatbot attached to the ad.
Yeah.
So my sense is in 2 years, this is going to be much more mainstream than it is right now.
Very, very interesting. And I mean, on that note, it's quite apt to sort of, I've learned a lot today. There's a lot of areas that I haven't really thought about, particularly in terms of marketing and these channels that are out there that certainly don't seem like they're utilized as well as they could be. And there's going to be a future development in that space, which completely makes sense logically. If the viewers and the guys listening, they want to get in touch with you, spin a yarn about this stuff, talk to you about what needle movement does, and get in touch just in generally, what's the best way for the guys to contact you?
I appreciate that. The best way to contact me is to just send me an email at hello@needlemovement.com. I open up every email. I respond to it. Needle Movement is also active on social media channels. You can find us there. And I guess another way to stay in touch is I'm a fellow podcaster with Segmentify. So the Needle Movement podcast, we're over 30 episodes in, and we like to chat about digital marketing, entrepreneurship, e-commerce.
Yeah.
Also like to talk about good music as well. So other stuff as well besides that. But yeah, I'm happy to, if anyone wants to reach out, I'm happy to offer a free quick audit or share, any revenue potential of these initiatives. And I know everyone's got to do their research and figure out what's going to work for them.
No, that's great. And that stuff works so well. Being able to give some free expert advice and start to build a relationship with people, it's a great way of doing it. And that's great. You've got a podcast. I don't mind you plugging your own podcast on my channel. It's absolutely fine. But, no, I actually have to.
Sounds like fighting words, very.
No, I'll have to get more out.
But that's how. But podcasts, you learn so much through podcasts, and I recommend to people, you want to learn something, just listen to a few podcasts, and you're going to get some really good dirt.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll have to get more out onto your channel for sure.
Right.
The entrepreneurial.
Looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it.
For sure. Well, I mean, thank you so much for your time, Stephen. It was great to hear all that great stuff. I love to do this as a sort of just a final thing, not to put you on the spot or anything, obviously, but just if there was one. No, I'm joking. If there was like one golden nugget, one thing, maybe from your experience in life, or as a vegetarian, or in business, or in needle movement, just one thing that would be something that you feel that would be really, really cool for our listeners or our viewers to take away. What would that be?
I'd like to, I guess the final note would be the importance of being an early adopter.
Yeah.
I think there was a time, having, seen the waves of e-commerce over the years, I think there was a time where you could sit back and wait and let someone do the bleeding edge early work, and you could reap the benefits on it. But now what we're seeing is brands that fall behind. Like this is what happens. Like, it's 2020. If your marketing playbook comes from 2018, there will be a huge impact in your results. It's really, that the early adopter wave, it's not about being the first, but it's about really, like this podcast is great because you get to hear early on what people are talking about and just listening in and getting into that first wave, because that's how you do well. I mean, an example of this, like what's happening with conversation marketing, like I'm getting deja vu flashbacks on it because it just reminds me of what happened in 2014 when Facebook started doing paid social and started doing lookalikes. And I was on the ground floor at that time, and there's, you would be surprised sometimes. There's some people that are, it's possible to be scared by change, to say, oh, this new technology is not for us. We should wait. And what's funny is in 2014, a lot of the scaredy cats, they're all doing it now because everybody else is doing it.
Yeah.
But the problem is they're paying full price on it. In 2014, like there were companies that killed it because they were paying pennies on the dollar for this new technology, lookalike audiences that other people were too scared to do. So I think it's good on your team also to encourage early adopters, because that's gonna keep you ahead financially as well.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And it takes a bit of courage. It takes a bit of boldness, and it's a cultural thing.
It is.
And, I think, I've talked to some other guys on some of these other shows, particularly entrepreneurs and so on, and nobody did it, without being ahead of the curve, to be honest. And, testing and measuring. So rather than kind of burning everything on the chance that you may have got it wrong, you don't have to go in full hog. You can go in a little bit and test the water and make sure you are right. But I completely love that and totally agree with you. So yeah, thank you so much for that wisdom, Stephen. That was great.
Thank you.
And generally across the whole chat, I thought it was really, really great. So thank you so much. And I hope that the guys that were listening and watching, that you found something useful there. And please do get in contact with Stephen if you've got questions or want to connect with him. He's a great guy. So actually, I didn't say where are you actually calling from? Because you're in the US. Right?
I am. I am calling from Brooklyn, New York.
Ah, right in the heart of it. Beautiful.
That's right.
Beautiful. Well, there we go. A Brooklyn man. So just remains for me to say that if you guys haven't registered already, please head over to segmentify.com/podcast or /e-commerce growth show now, given it's podcasts and vlogs. But anything you haven't caught up with will be there. Anything that we put out will be put there, and you can obviously subscribe as well to all the shows that come out. And also, if you want to be on the show or you have any particular questions about topics that you want me to find out about or interview people about, then do send me an email anytime, Phill@segmentify.com. But thanks so much for listening, everybody. Thanks again, Stephen, for some great discussion.
Thank you so much, Phill, for being on the show. It's been a real blast.
Absolutely. And I look forward to welcoming you on again another time.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
Take care. Thanks a lot, everyone.